Welcome back, you all, to CHD 208, Administration of Child Development Programs. This is the video lecture for Chapter 5, which is Handling Financial Matters. So the director, as we were talking about in the previous chapters, the director is the person who's going to handle that licensing and that all those regulations, but also they are the person who ultimately is responsible for running the center. So in order to meet the needs of the children they serve, the families that you serve, and the staff, there has to be a balanced budget and a financial plan in place. So in order to construct a financial plan, it has to consist of two things: a system for managing your financial resources and a means for obtaining adequate funding. So how are you going to manage your financial resources means how are you going to keep up with things? You may have to, it might be even talking about right down to the type of technology you may use, like QuickBooks, for example. QuickBooks will log in your expenses, drop them over into a specific category. It will write your checks for you. That you have to have a system, purchase order system, in order so that you can keep up with your expenses and your income. And then how are you going to get your funding? Where's your income coming from? Okay, so that is how you, are the two components of a well-constructed financial plan. So one thing to keep in mind is that high-quality childcare for young children is very expensive, and so you have to allocate funds in order to provide a developmentally sound program on which the children and the parents can depend. So that's one of the reasons why a financial plan is so important. So when you create a financial plan, you have to realize that decisions have to be made regarding who's going to be responsible for the center's financial management. If you have a board, sometimes it's the board, sometimes it's the possibly the partnership or an owner director might assume those duties, but typically if there is a director, the director is called upon to help in creating that financial plan, because they're the people that are there on the day-to-day basis, and say they know what those costs would be and what types of materials are used on a day-to-day basis. So one of the things to make sure when you're creating your financial plan, once you have it all set, is that you have a policies and procedures manual. So if I'm the director of a daycare center, I'm going to have a policies and procedures manual. And within that manual, one particular section of it is going to deal with the finances. Okay, so like what's going to happen and how we're going to handle our finances. We would probably state in there that we are checking all of our financials for accuracy, that we're going to follow standard accounting principles. There's going to have to be receipts logged for any money that is spent, that we're going to only use our business checking account for all of our transactions. We have to like payroll checks. Who's going to write the payroll checks? Purchase orders used to purchase any types of material. So those are the things that we're going to find in our policies and procedures manual. And it's a really good thing to go over those with your staff members. So, because when you spell them out, it helps avoid, problems in the future as well. Especially when the staff know what to expect, they are better able to implement policy and adjust their practice when needed. Another thing to take into account is establishing a fiscal calendar. Now, I did not say physical calendar, I said fiscal, FISCAL, and that deals with your finances. Okay, so that is what a fiscal calendar is. And so usually in a daycare center, your fiscal calendar is going to run from January 1 to December 30th. Okay, close of the year, you're going to start a new fiscal year the next year. However, if you're in a school system runs on school year. So they're going to run from August to May. Well, actually August to July, okay? Because they're new, they're going to run according to the school year. If you run in a school type place. If you are in a public school system, you're going to run from October because that's when they get their allocation until September. So that's your fiscal calendar. And those are kind of set for you based upon what kind of system you, what type of program you have. Someone's got to manage your payroll, pay the folks, withhold the taxes. That's usually your fiscal officer. And that person is responsible for withholding taxes, withholding the Social Security, and withholding the Medicare from the staff's payroll checks. So types of budgets, there's two types, a startup budget and an operating budget. The startup budget consists of all of the expenses that you're going to incur when you start your center. Your operating budget is how you keep the lights on, okay, from the day-to-day operations. So one thing to make sure that you do is to keep your staff informed on your budget decisions, because it makes them feel empowered and part of the budgeting process. So if you were to go to them and ask, you know, what types of materials do you need in your class? Do you need more paint than construction paper? We're trying to, you know, make sure that we are being good stewards of our money. So what things can we do without or less of? Okay, so just asking your staff will make them feel empowered, but also will help you keep a really good look on your operating budget. And so in order to create that operating budget, you've got to know, you have to have a list of your income and your expenses. And all of your expenses, you've got to have a dollar amount for each one of those categories, okay? You got to know what category it's going to go into in your budget. Salaries, and I put it right here in big print because it's a major component of any early childhood education budget. It's going to be the largest expense that you're going to encumber, is going to be salaries for your staff. So if you look on page 77 of your textbook, you will see a chart in the bottom that's called an overview of center staffing needs. And I'm going to talk to you about that just a second, because that is going to be what your assignment is going to be this week. But when we're talking about staffing and full-time equivalents is FTE. Okay, so if you ever see that abbreviation, that's what it stands for. And so about 70% of your operating budget is going to be spent on staff salaries and if you offer benefits. Okay, 70%. So when you think about that, that only leaves you another 30% to handle all the other expenses that you're going to encumber. So if you look on page 77, and go across, you'll see the infant category, okay? So if you have 6 children, 6 infants, and your ratio is 1 infant to every 3 adults, that means you're going to need 2 caregivers. If your 2 caregivers they work 12-hour days, that is 24 hours in 1 week that you're going to pay those 2 people to stay in that infant room, okay? So you're going to take that 24 and you're going to multiply that times 5, because that's how many days you're going to be open in a week, okay? That gives you 120. Then you're going to take that 120 and you're going to multiply it by 52, because that's how many weeks there are in a year. So you're going to pay those 2 people to take care of those 6 infants. They're going to work 6,240 hours between the 2 of them in the course of a year. So when you think about how much you pay them by the hour, then you're coming up with that full-time equivalence of how you're going to pay for them and how you're going to staff it. And can you afford it? So usually when we are trying to determine center staffing needs, if we're going to determine the cost per child of operating our center, we're going to divide the total cost of running our center. So let's say it cost us $3,000 a week to run our center. Okay, that's everything we have to do. And we have 30 children enrolled. So we would say 300 divided by, no, 3,000 divided by 30. And that's how we would come up with the cost of how much it would cost us to run our center for that week. So if it costs us $3,000 and we have 30 children, that is $100 per child, okay? Basically, in order to cover the expenses of our operating. So make sure you check out page 77 and in your textbook, and that will help you a little bit more. So your plant and equipment. The plant is like your physical plant, okay? And that's like your building, okay? So the largest cost in the physical plant category is rental, lease, or mortgage payments on your facility. That's going to be your largest expense in that area. The next one's going to be your supplies, and there's 3 types of supplies that you're going to purchase. You're going to purchase office and general supplies, classroom supplies, food supplies. And so if you're the director, and like we said earlier, if you will consult those staff members who use those products or services, you'll be able to keep those supply costs down by consulting the folks that actually use them. And this is just an idea. They do this a lot in larger cities, but it could be done in smaller ones as well. But it's called cooperative buying, and it's when several centers band together to purchase a large quantity of items, and they get them at a reduced price, which could be a cost saving for smaller centers if you could come together with several centers to buy in bulk, so to speak. So thanks for joining me for chapter 5, and I'll see you next week.